What is going on with the price of silver and everything you need to know about it? So, recently, the price of silver has been gaining traction. There's been a 158% increase this year, which beats the S&P 500 by like 4 or 5 times. But what does this mean? Why is the price going up in such a drastic way? Now, there are a couple of reasons you could use to explain this. And actually, I'm going to use all of them to explain it because all of them kind of make sense. Now, the first you could argue is our favorite word in the United States, tariffs. A tariff is just a tax, which is a fancy way for saying you're taxing a consumption of someone, meaning the price of the good going up. So, in other words, inflation. So, it is being priced in as inflation eventually. And so, we'll come back to this thought a little bit later with other inflation thoughts. But the second one is that debt levels are historically high. Here's a projection from Lincoln Financial that explains um, the U.S. debt levels as a percent of GDP. And normally, when debt levels are this high, investors like to hide. They like to hide in stocks, they like to hide in bonds, they like to hide in like alternative assets, but there seems to be nowhere to hide, and there's good reason for that. According to the Shiller Index, we're at all-time highs for valuations, and this is what most people refer to as like for saying that the market is overpriced, or this is usually when you see people like Warren Buffett have large amounts of cash, as he does now. Warren Buffett has like $266 billion in cash right now. So people aren't investing in the stock market because they're so linked together. And I'll link a video below that explains how you can't escape anything in the stock market right now. Like there's nowhere to hide in stocks. Aswath Damaran, I think is his name, from uh, NYU Stern has a great video about it. But um, there's nowhere to go. Um, and this has given the Fed and the US government kind of a little trepidation, I would say. And, as they're thinking things through, they don't actually think things through. And instead, they think, how can we make the number go up? And they say, well, we want the stock market to continue, so we want to lower interest rates. And this seems to be the remedy for literally every crisis. Um, and lowering interest rates is just another way for saying printing money. Um, and this most certainly this will happen next year when Trump appoints a new Fed chair. Is the guy will lower interest rates as low as he can without the market losing faith. Um, and so let's look at this. Who was the first guy, do you think, to print money? And it wasn't our fun boy Jerome Powell. It was actually Arthur Burns. And Arthur Burns, unlike his successful but successor, the guy who smoked the cigar, I forgot his name, he lowered interest rates in a time where there was inflation. And that is currently what we have, is we have inflation and lowering interest rates, and that led to a decade of stagflation, which could lead to more inflation of asset classes, even if these asset classes are overblown. So people don't want to invest in the market because the PEs are getting a little bit insane, and they can't really invest in private equity or credit right now because they there was like a 14% drawdown in BlackRock's private equity private credit place. There was there's it's not going super well right now. People are taking more of a wait and see approach, and these guys are still connected to the top 10 companies. Um, they're not isolated from them. And so investors have been looking to one of the oldest assets of all time, gold. And you can see that, you know what year Nixon took us off the gold standard and asked Arthur Burns to lower interest rates? Was 1971. And that's exactly when gold ripped. Um, uh, Arthur Burns, who actually, no, that's not great. Um, that's exactly when gold ripped. And the price of famously for the same amount of gold in the 1970s, famously you need the same amount of gold from the 1970s to buy a house as you do today. So it's well known for keeping up with inflation. But here's the problem with gold is that everyone has begun speculating on it. And so everyone has bought their fair share of golds. Even Federal Reserve banks have been speculating on gold. Um, and so there's kind of nowhere to hide in there either. But let's look at some other precious metals. Why would silver be a beneficiary of rising inflation, tariffs, and more money printing? Um, let's see. So, silver is the most in demand metal, maybe except platinum, which you can make an argument for platinum. But this is the reason why the price of silver has increased a ton. Um, is that 33 the demand for silver is 33% in electrical and electronics, 5% in brazing alloys and solders, other industrial, photography, jewelry, silverware, net physical investments. Okay, so that you that's a wide range of utility for silver. Whereas gold is usually just for central bank buying or as seen as an investment, but it doesn't actually have as much of a physical use. And platinum is seen more as like raw physical use. So silver sits like kind of in between investment and pure physical use usually. And so we've seen the price of gold and silver go up a ton in the last couple of days and a ton in the last 6 months. In the last 5 days, it's been up 19%. And all of this is being priced into the markets because we're going to see interest rates go pretty low. Not zero, but as low as they can reasonably get it. And if you would look at the price of gold in the 70s when we had stagflation, uh, it kept up. It kept up. And I think it'll do the same. I don't think there's really precedent for it um, not keeping up with inflation. It's seems like a pretty safe asset, and I think silver is going to be the beneficiary of many of the advantages that gold had um, many years ago, um, especially when it comes to industrial uses.